every night she crossed the water. Every night, when the moon rose high and the world fell silent, she slipped into the cold Pacific waters and swam. 1 mile across the inlet, through the darkness, through the cold, through the danger, to reach him. They said she was crazy. They said no love was worth dying for. But Sophie Brennan didn't care what they said, because on the other side of that water, in a small cabin by the shore, a man waited for her with a lantern in his window. A man who had given up everything, his fortune, his family, his future, just to be near her. A man she loved more than her own life. This is the story of Sophie and Michael, a love so powerful it defied families. Haven Cove, Washington. A small fishing village on the Pacific coast, where the mountains met the sea and the fog rolled in every evening like clockwork. Population? 800 souls. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where secrets didn't stay secret for long, where daughters married fishermen and sons followed their fathers onto the boats. It had been this way for generations, and no one expected it to change. The town hugged the shoreline like a child clinging to its mother. Wooden houses painted in faded blues and whites. A single main street with a general store, a church, a tavern, and not much else. Fishing nets drying in the sun. The smell of salt and seaweed in every breath. It was beautiful in its simplicity, harsh in its isolation, and completely unaware that its most famous love story was about to begin. At the edge of town, where the main street gave way to rocky shore, stood a small workshop with a hand-painted sign, Brennan's Glass. Thomas Brennan was the town's only glassblower, a craftsman whose family had been shaping molten glass for 4 generations. Delicate glass floats for fishing nets, beautiful vases that caught the light, ornamental pieces that wealthy tourists bought to take back to Seattle and Portland. But Thomas Brennan's greatest creation wasn't made of glass. It was his daughter. Sophie Brennan was 20 years old in the summer of 1952, and she was the most beautiful girl Haven Cove had ever seen. Her hair was dark as midnight, falling in waves down her back, wild and untamable like the sea itself. Her eyes were the color of sea glass, that pale, mystical blue-green that seemed to change with the light, sometimes gray as storm clouds, sometimes bright as summer sky. Her skin was fair, kissed with freckles across her nose from hours working near the furnace. Her smile was rare, but when she did smile, it was like watching the sun break through the coastal fog. She had learned her father's craft from the time she could walk. At 5, she was fetching tools. At 10, she was mixing colors. At 15, she made her first piece, a small glass bird that her father still kept on the windowsill. By 20, her hands knew the weight of the blowpipe, the rhythm of the breath, the exact moment when molten glass was ready to be shaped. She could feel the glass speaking to her, telling her what it wanted to become. Her pieces were even more beautiful than her father's. Delicate glass birds that seemed ready to fly, intricate flowers frozen in eternal bloom, vases that looked like waves caught mid-crash, ornaments that captured light and turned it into rainbows. People came from miles around to buy Sophie's glass, but they also came just to look at her. Every young man in Haven Cove had tried to win Sophie Brennan's heart. Tommy Fletcher, the blacksmith's son, who brought her flowers every Sunday for a year. Robert Cole, the fisherman's son, who had been in love with her since they were children. David Morrison, the doctor's nephew, who visited from Seattle every summer, hoping she would notice him. Every single one had failed. She was polite, she was kind, but she was never interested. "What are you waiting for?" her best friend Mary would ask. "Tommy is handsome, Robert is kind, David is rich. What more do you want?" Sophie would just shrug. "I don't know. Something more, something different, something that makes me feel like I'm flying." "That's not realistic, Sophie. That's a fairy tale." "Then maybe I'm waiting for a fairy tale." Her father began to worry. "You're 20 years old, Sophie," he would say, his Irish accent still thick despite decades in America. "It's time to think about your future, about a husband, about a family, about—" She took a breath. "And what I feel when I'm with you, it's like discovering the most amazing book for the first time. Every page is a surprise. Every chapter is beautiful. And I never want to stop reading." Daniel reached out and touched her face, gently, reverently. "I'm falling for you too, Emma. You can't fall for someone you're already married to. Watch me, because this is new for me too. You're new. Getting to know you again, making you laugh again, watching you discover things about yourself, it's been the most incredible experience of my life." Their foreheads touched. They breathed the same air, hearts beating in sync. "Can I kiss you?" Daniel whispered. "I've been waiting for you to ask." The kiss was soft, tender, full of promise. It wasn't a kiss of memory. It was a kiss of discovery. A first kiss. Their second first kiss. And it was perfect.
Michael Walsh was 24 years old, the only son of Edward Walsh, owner of Walsh Shipping, the largest shipping company on the West Coast. His great-grandfather had started with a single boat, running cargo between Seattle and Alaska. His grandfather had expanded to a fleet. His father had turned it into an empire, and Michael was expected to inherit it all. He had everything a young man could want: money beyond measure, status beyond question, a mansion overlooking the water, a guaranteed future as heir to his father's empire, women from the finest families in Seattle lining up to marry him. And he was absolutely, completely, desperately miserable. The parties bored him. The business dealings bored him. The endless conversations about shipping routes and profit margins and market shares bored him. And the women? The endless parade of suitable young women, all so similar with their practiced smiles and calculated conversations, their eyes always fixed on his wallet rather than his heart, they bored him most of all.
"What's wrong with you?" his mother would ask. "Victoria Hamilton is beautiful and accomplished, and her father controls half the shipping lanes to Alaska." "I don't love Victoria Hamilton, Mother." "Love? What does love have to do with anything? Marriage is about alliance, security, legacy. And what about happiness?" His mother would laugh. "Happiness is for poets and fools. We're Walshes. We build empires." Michael Walsh didn't want to build an empire. He didn't want to spend his life in boardrooms and ballrooms. He didn't want to marry a woman whose only interest was his bank account. He wanted something real, something true, something that made him feel alive. "You're a fool," his father would say. "You have everything and you appreciate nothing. Do you know how many men would kill to be in your position? Then let them have it. That's not how this works, Michael. You're my son, my only son. This company will be yours whether you want it or not." Maybe his father was right. Maybe he was a fool. But Michael couldn't help the emptiness he felt. The sense that his life, for all its privilege, was missing something essential, something he couldn't name, until the day he found it.
It was August 1952 when Michael Walsh first came to Haven Cove. He was on a weekend drive, trying to escape the suffocation of Seattle society. His father had just announced Michael's engagement to Victoria Hamilton without asking Michael's opinion. Michael had stormed out of the house, gotten in his car, and driven north with no destination in mind, just a desperate need to get away. His car broke down just outside the village, a flat tire on the coastal road. No other cars in sight, just fog and trees and the distant sound of waves. He walked into town, found the general store, asked about a mechanic. "Old Pete can fix it," the shopkeeper said, "but he's out fishing, won't be back till evening." "Evening? I need to get back to Seattle tonight." The shopkeeper shrugged. "Then you should have broken down somewhere else. Welcome to Haven Cove. Nothing moves fast here."
With nothing to do but wait, Michael wandered the town. It was small, simple, nothing like Seattle. No fancy restaurants, no elegant shops, no pretension at all. Just honest working people going about their honest working lives. And then he saw the glass. There, in the window of a small workshop, was a glass sculpture of a wave. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The glass was the color of the ocean in storm, deep blue fading to pale green, fading to white foam at the crest. The way the light passed through it, the way it seemed to move even while standing still, the way it captured something wild and untamable and made it eternal. Michael stood there for a full 5 minutes, just staring. He had seen expensive art in galleries. He had seen priceless antiques in mansions. But he had never seen anything that moved him like this single piece of glass in a small shop window. He had to have it. He walked in.
The heat hit him first. The furnace was blazing, filling the small workshop with warmth that bordered on uncomfortable. Then the smell, something metallic and ancient and alive. Then the sound, the roar of the fire, the clink of tools, the rhythm of breath. A young woman stood at the furnace, her back to him, shaping something in the flames. Her dark hair was pulled up in a missy dun. Her sleeves were rolled to her elbows. Her arms moved with the confidence of someone who had done this 1,000 times. "Hello?" Michael called out. "Is anyone here?" "One moment," she said without turning. "I can't stop in the middle of a piece." Michael waited. He watched her work. The way her hands moved, confident and graceful. The way she seemed to dance with the flame. The way the molten glass responded to her touch like a living thing. He had never seen anyone work with such focus, such passion, such complete and total absorption.
When she finally finished, she set down her tools and wiped her forehead with her sleeve. Then she turned around. Their eyes met, and the world stopped. Michael Walsh had seen beautiful women all his life. Models, actresses, debutantes trained from birth to be ornamental. But he had never seen anything like Sophie Brennan.
A soul that seemed as untamable as the ocean she lived beside. "Can I help you?" Sophie asked. Michael opened his mouth. No words came out. For the first time in his privileged, polished, Sophie tilted her head, a small smile playing at her lips. City people always reacted strangely to her, but this one seemed particularly struck. "Are you all right?" "The wave," Michael finally managed. his voice coming out rough. "In the window. The glass wave. I'd like to buy it." Sophie's smile faded slightly. "That one's not for sale. I'll pay whatever you want. Name your price." "It's still not for sale." "Why not?" Sophie walked to the window and picked up the piece, holding it up to the light. For a moment, she seemed to forget he was there.
Her face softened as she looked at her creation. "Because I made it for myself. Some things aren't meant to be bought and sold. Some things are meant to be kept. But surely, you're from Seattle, aren't you?" Sophie interrupted, looking at his expensive clothes, his Italian shoes, his watch that cost more than most people here made in a year. Rich city people always think everything has a price. Doesn't it? No. She set the wave back in the window. Some things are priceless, and some things aren't for sale at any price. Michael didn't know what to say. He had never been refused anything in his life. Money had always opened every door, bought every object, solved every problem. But this girl in this small shop had just told him no. And somehow, instead of making him angry, it made him more intrigued. "Then I'll come back," he said, "every day if I have to, until you make something you're willing to sell me." Sophie laughed. It was unexpected. Musical.
The most beautiful sound he had ever heard. "Every day? You'll drive 200 miles every day for a piece of glass?" "For glass like that, I'd drive 1,000. "That's ridiculous." "Probably, but I've spent my whole life being sensible. Maybe it's time to be ridiculous." Sophie studied him. Most city people who came through here were pompous, condescending, looking down at the simple fishing village and its simple residents. But this man was different. There was something genuine behind his expensive facade. Something almost lost. "What's your name?" she asked. "Michael. Michael Walsh." "Well, Michael Walsh, I'm Sophie Brennan. And I don't care how many days you come back. That wave is still not for sale." "Then I'll just have to keep coming back until I convince you otherwise." "You'll be disappointed." "We'll see." Something passed between them in that moment. Not love. Not yet. But the beginning of something. A spark. A possibility.
A doorway to a future neither of them could imagine. "Your car?" Sophie said, breaking the moment. "Was that your car on the coastal road with the flat tire?" "How did you know?" "Small town. Word travels fast. Old Pete's back from fishing. He should be able to fix it by now." "Already?" "Like I said, small town." Michael nodded. He should go. He should get his car fixed and drive back to Seattle and face his father and forget this strange girl in this strange village. But he didn't want to. "Is there somewhere to stay in town? A hotel? An inn?" Sophie raised an eyebrow. "The Seabird Inn, down the street, past the church. But why would you need to stay? Seattle's only a few hours away." "Maybe I'm not ready to go back to Seattle." "Why not?" Michael looked at her sea glass eyes, at her wild dark hair, at the smudge of soot on her nose that she still hadn't noticed. "Because I have a feeling there's something here worth staying for."
Michael Walsh didn't go back to Seattle that weekend, or the next, or the one after that. He called his father from the inn's single telephone and said he needed time away. "Time away?" his father shouted. "From what? You don't do anything. You have no responsibilities. What could you possibly need time away from?" "From everything, Father. I'm giving you 1 week. 1 week. Then I'm coming to drag you back myself." The line went dead. Michael hung up the phone and smiled. 1 week was more than enough. Every day he came to Sophie's workshop. At first he pretended he wanted to buy glass. He would examine pieces, ask about techniques, request custom orders he never intended to pick up. Then, after a few days, he stopped pretending. He just wanted to be near her.
They would talk for hours while she worked, about art, about the sea, about dreams and fears and all the things neither of them had ever told anyone. She told him about losing her mother when she was 8, about learning glass from her father as a way to stay connected to her, about feeling trapped in this small town, but also terrified to leave it. He told her about the expectations crushing him in Seattle, about the emptiness of his privileged life, about feeling like he was playing a role he had never auditioned for. She tried to teach him to blow glass. He was terrible at it. His first piece was supposed to be a simple ball. It came out looking like a diseased potato. His second attempt was worse. By the third, Sophie was laughing so hard she had to set down her tools. "You are hopeless," she said, wiping tears from her eyes.
Completely, he agreed, looking at his lopsided creation. But I'm not giving up. Why not? Some things clearly aren't meant to be. Because you're laughing, and I would fail at 1,000 things just to hear that sound. Her laughter faded. She looked at him differently then, like she was seeing him for the first time. Like she was realizing that this wasn't just a bored, rich man playing at slumming, that there was something real between them, something dangerous. They began walking together, through the town, along the beach, up the cliffs to where the eagles nested. She showed him the hidden coves where seals sunbathed, the tide pools filled with strange and beautiful creatures, the lighthouse on the point that had guided ships safely home for 100 years. "Why are you still here?" she asked one evening, as they sat on the rocks watching the sun sink into the ocean. "Don't you have a life in Seattle? A business? A family?" "I have all those things," Michael said. "But they don't feel like living. This feels like living. This is just a small town where nothing ever happens. You're here. That makes it the most exciting place in the world." Sophie shook her head, but she was smiling. "You're ridiculous. You've mentioned that. Is that really why you're staying? Because of me?" Michael turned to face her. The sunset painted her face in gold and rose. Her hair blew wild in the wind. Her eyes caught the fading light, like the glass she shaped. "I've spent my whole life in a gilded cage," he said quietly. "Beautiful on the outside, empty on the inside. Then I walked into your shop and saw that wave in the window, and I felt something I'd never felt before." "What?" "Hope. Hope that there might be something more, something real, something worth living for." He reached out and touched her hand. It was the first time they had touched. Her skin was warm from the lingering heat of the day, roughened from work. Real. "You're that something, Sophie. I know it sounds crazy. We've only known each other a few weeks, but I know it. I feel it. Like I've been waiting my whole life to find you." Sophie pulled her hand back. Her heart was racing. Every word he said echoed what she felt. But she was terrified. "This can't work," she whispered. "You're from Seattle. I'm from here. You're rich. I'm not. Your family would never accept me. My father would never accept you. I don't care about any of that. You should. The world cares. The world doesn't let people like us be together. Then we'll fight the world." "Michael." "Sophie." He took both her hands in his. "I'm not asking for forever. Not yet. I'm just asking for a chance. A chance to see what this could be. A chance to feel alive for once in my life. Please. Just give me a chance." Sophie looked at him, at this man who had driven 200 miles and stayed 3 weeks just to be near her, who had given up parties and mansions and suitable matches to laugh at his own failures in her workshop, who looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. "One chance," she whispered. "But if this goes wrong, it won't. You can't promise that. I can promise I'll do everything in my power to make it work. Everything. Whatever it takes." She believed him. That was the terrifying part. She believed every word. The rest of August passed in a dream. They walked together every evening. They talked until the stars came out. They discovered they loved the same books. Hemingway, Steinbeck, the poetry of Neruda. They discovered they hated the same things: pretension, cruelty, the way the world tried to fit everyone into neat little boxes. It was at the old abandoned lighthouse on the North Point where Michael first kissed her. The moon was full. The water was silver. The whole world felt like it was holding its breath. "Sophie," he whispered, his face inches from hers. "I think I'm falling in love with you." "I think I'm falling too," she whispered back. Their lips met, gentle, trembling, like the moment before glass takes its final form, fragile and transformative and eternal. They held each other as the waves crashed below. Two people from different worlds, finding home in each other's arms. "Whatever happens," Michael said, "I want you to know, this is real. What I feel for you is the truest thing I've ever felt." "I know," Sophie said. "I feel it too. Then nothing can stop us."
But even as he said it, the world was already moving against them. Forces they couldn't see, plans they couldn't know, betrayals they couldn't imagine. The happiest moments often come right before the fall. 1 month after Michael arrived in Haven Cove, his father came to find him. Edward Walsh stepped out of his chauffeur-driven car and surveyed the small town with undisguised contempt. Fishing boats, shabby houses, working people in rough clothes. This was where his son had been hiding for a month. This was where his empire's heir had chosen to waste his life. "Pack your things," Edward said without greeting. "We're leaving, now." Michael stood his ground. "No, father. This isn't a discussion. I've let you play at rebellion long enough. Victoria Hamilton's father is becoming impatient. The wedding is set for December. There are contracts to sign, alliances to forge. I'm not marrying Victoria." "Oh, and who will you marry instead? Some fisherman's daughter? Some nobody from this nowhere town?"
"Her name is Sophie, and she's not a nobody. She's the most remarkable person I've ever met." Edward laughed, a cold, cruel sound. "The Glassblower's girl? Yes, I've done my research. Pretty enough, I'll grant you. They always are, these girls who trap rich men's sons. But she's nothing, Michael. She has nothing. She is nothing. She's everything. She's a trap, a distraction, a pretty face that will fade and leave you with nothing but regret. Is that what you want? To throw away Walsh shipping for a village girl who shapes pretty trinkets? I don't want Walsh shipping. I never wanted it. I want a life that means something, a love that's real. And I found that with Sophie. Love." Edward spat the word like poison. "Your great-grandfather didn't build this company on love. Your grandfather didn't survive the Depression on love. I didn't spend 40 years. I don't care what you spent. I don't care about the company. I love Sophie, and I'm going to marry her." Edward Walsh was not a man accustomed to being defied. He was not a man who accepted failure. And he was certainly not a man who would let his only son throw away his future for a small-town glassblower's daughter.
"If you marry that girl," Edward said, his voice quiet now, deadly calm, "you will be cut off completely. No money, no inheritance, no name. You will be dead to this family. Then I'll be dead. At least I'll be happy." "You think you'll be happy? Poverty isn't romantic, Michael. Love doesn't pay bills. When the money runs out, and it will, that girl will see you for what you really are. Nothing. Just a fool who threw everything away for a pretty face. You're wrong. I'm never wrong. And I'll prove it to you." He turned to leave. But at the door he paused. "You think you're making a noble choice," he said without turning around. "You think you're being brave. But you're not. You're being stupid. And you're making an enemy. I'm not afraid of you, Father. You should be. You don't know what I'm capable of." He walked out. And Michael felt for the first time a chill of real fear.
What Michael didn't know was that his father wasn't going back to Seattle. Not yet. First, he had another visit to make. Thomas Brennan was already at the tavern when Edward arrived. Edward had sent a message ahead, an invitation. "One businessman to another," it said. "Let's discuss our children's futures." "Your daughter," Edward began without pleasantries, "has bewitched my son. He's prepared to throw away a $100 million company for her." Thomas Brennan's face was hard. "My daughter has done no bewitching. Your son pursued her. I've tried to keep them apart." "Not hard enough." "What would you have me do? Lock her in her room?" "If necessary." Edward pulled out an envelope thick with cash. "Marry her off, to someone else, someone local, someone who will keep her here, in this village, far away from my son." Thomas looked at the money. More than he made in 5 years.
Enough to expand his workshop, buy new equipment, secure his retirement. Then he looked at Edward Walsh, at his expensive suit and cold eyes, and absolute certainty that everyone had a price. "I don't need your money to control my own daughter." "No? Then why haven't you stopped this already?" "Because I didn't know how serious it was. I thought it was a summer fancy, a rich boy playing games before returning to his real life. It's more than that. He's talking about marriage." Thomas's face darkened. "Marriage? He wants to marry my Sophie? He's lost his mind. They both have. And if we don't stop it, both our families will suffer. You'll lose your daughter to a world where she doesn't belong. I'll lose my heir to a world where he doesn't belong. We both lose." Thomas hated Edward Walsh, hated his arrogance, his wealth, his assumption that everything and everyone could be bought. But he agreed with him about one thing. This relationship was madness. Sophie didn't belong in Seattle high society. She would be miserable there, mocked, excluded.
Made to feel small and worthless. And when the Walsh boy inevitably tired of her and returned to his own kind, she would be left with nothing. A ruined reputation. No husband. No future. "I'll handle it," Thomas said finally. "Keep your money. I'll handle my daughter." "How?" "She'll marry Robert Cole. He's wanted her for years. He's a good man, a fisherman. He'll give her a good life here, where she belongs." "And if she refuses?" "She won't refuse. She's my daughter. She'll do as I say." Edward nodded slowly. "Good. I'm taking my son back to Seattle tomorrow. I'll make sure he understands the consequences of continued disobedience. You make sure your daughter understands hers." "Agreed." They shook hands. Two fathers. Both believing they knew what was best for their children. Both about to destroy the only happiness their children had ever known. The next morning, Michael was awakened by pounding on his door. Two of his father's men. Large, silent, unmovable. "Your father requests your presence in Seattle," one said. "Tell my father." It wasn't a request. They took him by force, pushed him into the car, locked the doors. Michael tried to fight, but they were stronger. He tried to reason, but they didn't answer. He tried to escape at a stop, but they were ready for that too. By evening, he was back in Seattle, in his father's study, the door locked from the outside. "You'll stay here until you come to your senses," Edward said. "No phone, no letters, no contact with anyone, until you agree to marry Victoria and forget that village girl." "I won't. I'll never forget her." "Then you'll stay locked in this room for the rest of your life. I have that power, Michael. Don't test me. You can't keep me here forever. Watch me." The door closed. The lock clicked, and Michael was a prisoner in his own home. In Haven Cove, Sophie waited. At the lighthouse, their meeting place. He had said he would come at sunset. But sunset came and went, and Michael didn't appear. She waited an hour, 2 hours, 3. Finally, she ran to the inn. "The Seattle man?" she gasped. "Michael Walsh? Is he here?" The innkeeper shook his head. "Left this morning. His father came and took him. Didn't say goodbye to anyone." "Took him? What do you mean, took him?" "Put him in a car and drove off. Looked like he didn't want to go, if you ask me. But that father of his didn't seem to care much about what he wanted." Sophie's heart stopped. He was gone. Without a word. Without a goodbye. Without a chance to explain. She ran home. Through tears, through the rain that had started to fall, through the sudden darkness that had consumed her world. He was gone. He was gone. He was gone. Her father was waiting. "Where have you been?" "Papa, Michael, he's gone." "Yes, his father took him back where he belongs. And now you need to get your head straight too." "What are you talking about?" "I've accepted Robert Cole's proposal on your behalf. You'll marry him next month." Sophie felt the ground drop out from under her. "What?" "Robert has loved you for years. He's a good man, a provider. He'll give you a good life." "I don't love Robert." "Love will come with time. It did for your mother and me." "I love Michael." Thomas's hand cracked across her face. The slap echoed in the small kitchen. Sophie staggered back, hand to her cheek, too shocked for tears.
"Michael Walsh is gone," Thomas said, his voice cold. "He's not coming back. Whatever lies he told you, whatever promises he made, they meant nothing. He's back in Seattle, where he belongs, probably already engaged to some rich girl his father picked out. That's how people like him work. They play with girls like you, then they go home and marry their own kind. That's not true. It is true, and the sooner you accept it, the sooner you can move on with your life. You'll marry Robert. You'll have children. You'll forget this summer ever happened. I won't. You will, or you'll leave this house and never come back. Those are your choices. Make one." Sophie looked at her father, at the man who had raised her alone after her mother died, who had taught her everything she knew, who had never hit her before today. She was 20 years old. She had no money, no skills beyond glassblowing, no way to support herself. If she left, she would have nothing. If she stayed, she would have existence. Not life, but existence. "Fine," she whispered, her voice dead. "I'll marry Robert." Thomas nodded. "Good. The wedding is in 3 weeks. Start preparing." He walked out, and Sophie collapsed to the floor.
3 weeks later, Sophie Brennan married Robert Cole. The church was small. The day was gray. The bride wore white, but looked like she was dressed for a funeral. She said the words the minister asked her to say. I do. For better or worse. Till death do us part. But her voice was hollow. Her eyes were empty. Her heart was somewhere else entirely. 200 miles south. In a locked room. With a man who had promised her forever. Robert Cole was a good man. He had loved Sophie since they were children. He had waited years for her to notice him. And now, finally, she was his wife. He told himself she would learn to love him. That time would heal whatever wounds she carried. He was wrong. But he didn't know that yet. They moved into a small house on the shore. Robert's fishing boat could be seen from the kitchen window. The glass workshop was a 20-minute walk away. Sophie continued to work there during the days, creating beautiful things, while feeling nothing at all. Every night, she lay beside her husband and stared at the ceiling. Robert was kind to her, gentle. He never raised his voice. He brought her flowers. He told her she was beautiful. And Sophie felt nothing. Nothing but a hollow ache where her heart used to be. She thought of Michael constantly, wondered where he was, what he was doing, if he had forgotten her, if he had married someone else, if she had ever meant anything to him at all. Months passed. Autumn turned to winter. Winter thawed into spring. Sophie went through the motions of life. Working, cooking, being a wife. But she was a ghost, a shell, a glass sculpture, beautiful on the outside, empty within. It was May 1953, nearly a year since Michael had been taken, when a stranger arrived in Haven Cove. He came by boat, a simple fishing vessel he had worked on from Alaska. He was thin, bearded, wearing rough clothes. His hands were calloused from months of manual labor. He looked like any other drifter looking for work. No one recognized him. No one connected this weathered fisherman to the wealthy Seattle heir who had stayed at the inn the summer before. No one, except Sophie. She was at the fish market when she saw him. Just a glimpse across the crowded stalls. A profile, a way of standing, something familiar that made her heart stop. She pushed through the crowd, grabbed his arm. He turned, and even through the beard, even through the rough clothes, even through the haunted look in his eyes, she knew. Michael? He stared at her, like he was seeing a ghost, like he had dreamed of this moment so many times he couldn't believe it was real. Sophie! Her basket fell from her hands. Fish scattered across the ground. She didn't notice. They told me you left. They told me you went back to Seattle, that you didn't care. My father took me by force, locked me in the house for 3 months, threatened to have you hurt, arrested, worse, if I tried to contact you. By the time I escaped, I heard you were married. I thought you abandoned me. Never. His voice broke. I would never abandon you. Not as long as I live. People were starting to stare.
Sophie grabbed Michael's hand and pulled him through the market, down an alley, to a quiet spot behind the cannery. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "If my father finds out, if Robert—" "I don't care about your father or Robert or anyone else. I gave up everything. My name, my money, my family, to find my way back to you. You gave up everything."
He told her about the locked room, the 3 months of isolation, his father's threats that if Michael tried to contact her, he would have Sophie arrested for fraud, for seduction, for anything he could manufacture, that he would destroy her father's business, that he would ruin her reputation, that he would make sure she never worked again. "I believed him," Michael said. "He has that power." So I pretended to comply. I agreed to everything he demanded. I played the dutiful son until he relaxed his guard. Then I took what cash I could find and ran. But the money? Gone. I used it to buy passage on a fishing boat. I've been working my way down the coast for months, living on nothing, just trying to get back to you. Sophie touched his face, this face she had thought about every night for a year. Thinner now, rougher, but the same eyes, the same soul. "I'm married, Michael. I know. I can't leave Robert. I have nowhere to go. I know that too. I'm not asking you to leave him. I'm not asking for anything. His voice broke again. I just couldn't be far away from you anymore. I'll take any scrap of you I can have. A word, a glance, just knowing you're close. It's enough. It has to be enough."
Sophie looked at him. This man who had given up millions, who had worked as a deckhand on fishing boats, who had traveled hundreds of miles just to be near her. "There's an old cabin across the inlet, the Morrison place. It's been empty for years. You could stay there." "How would I see you?" Sophie looked out at the water, at the inlet that separated the village from the isolated north shore, 1 mile across. "I'll come to you." "How?" "I'll swim." The inlet was 1 mile wide, cold, dark water, separating 2 shores. On one side, Sophie's life with Robert. On the other, Michael in his small, abandoned cabin. So close, she could see smoke from his fire on clear days, and impossibly far. Every night, Michael lit a lantern in his window, a signal, a beacon. A promise that he was there, that he was waiting, that he would always be waiting. And every night, Sophie looked out her window and saw that small light burning on the far shore. Robert slept soundly beside her. He worked long hours on the fishing boats. He was exhausted by dark. He never knew that his wife lay awake for hours, staring at a light across the water. One night, Sophie couldn't bear it anymore. She slipped out of bed, put on a simple dress, walked down to the shore, and waded into the cold, dark water. The water was freezing. The current was strong. The crossing was dangerous, especially at night. But Sophie had grown up on this coast. She had swum in these waters since childhood. She knew the currents, the tides, the tricks of the inlet. And for Michael, she would have swum across an ocean.
When she finally reached the other side, she was shaking. From cold, from exhaustion, from the overwhelming emotion of what she had just done. And then Michael was there, running down from his cabin, wrapping her in a blanket, pulling her close. "You're here," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You actually came." "I'll always come," she said through chattering teeth. "As long as that light burns, I'll always find my way to you." He carried her to his cabin, built up the fire, made her warm, and for a few precious hours, they had what they had always wanted, each other, just the two of them, the world and all its cruelty locked outside. It became their ritual, their religion, their reason to survive. Every night when the moon rose and Robert was asleep, Sophie would slip from her bed and swim the inlet. Every night, Michael would light his lantern and wait. Every night, they stole a few hours of love from a world that wanted to keep them apart. In spring, when the water was still cold enough to stop her breath. In summer, when it was almost gentle. In autumn, when the currents grew stronger and the nights grew longer. She never missed a night. Not when she was tired. Not when the water was rough. Not when the fog was so thick she could barely see the light. Michael begged her to be more careful. "The water is too dangerous," he said. "Let me come to you instead." "You can't. The village is too small. Someone would see you." "Then let me get a boat." "A boat would make noise. Swimming is silent." "Sophie, please." She silenced him with a kiss. "I would swim through fire for you, Michael. Cold water is nothing." And so it continued, night after night, month after month. Two souls defying the world to be together. But they were not as invisible as they believed. Robert's sister Martha had come to live with them after her own marriage failed. A bitter woman, sharp-eyed, jealous. She noticed that Sophie was always tired in the mornings, that her hair sometimes smelled of salt water, that she had a light in her eyes that wasn't there when she looked at Robert. One night, Martha pretended to sleep, and she watched. She saw Sophie slip from the bed, saw her creep down to the water, saw her swim across the inlet toward a light on the far shore. Martha smiled, a cold, terrible smile. She had suspected Sophie of wickedness. Now she had proof. She wouldn't tell Robert. Not yet. First, she would find another way to punish her sister-in-law. A more permanent way. When the water was too rough to swim, Sophie would take a small rowboat hidden in the reeds. Just a tiny thing, barely seaworthy, but enough to carry her across on the worst nights. Martha found the boat, and she knew exactly what to do. The boat had small drainage holes in the bottom, sealed with wooden plugs. Martha removed the plugs. Then she covered the holes with a thin layer of pitch, just enough to hold for a few minutes before the cold water dissolved it. "Let's see how well the witch swims," Martha whispered, "when she has no boat to save her." November brought the storms, the worst in years. The water turned angry, churning with currents that could pull a grown man under. The nights turned bare cold. The fog came in thicker than ever. Sophie looked out at the inlet. The waves were monstrous. The wind was howling. Rain lashed against the windows. It was the worst night she had ever seen. But there, through the storm, she could still make out Michael's light, burning as it always did, waiting for her. She should stay. Any sane person would stay. The water was death tonight. But she thought of Michael, alone in his cabin, watching the light go unanswered, worrying, wondering, fearing the worst. She couldn't do that to him. Not tonight. Not ever. The water was too rough to swim. But the boat would be safer. She slipped out of the house, made her way to the hidden reeds, found her little boat, pushed it into the raging water, and climbed in. The water was furious. Waves crashed over the bow. Rain poured down. The wind tried to push her back to shore. She could barely see the light on the far side, but she kept rowing. 1 stroke, 2 strokes, her arms burning, her heart pounding. Halfway across, she noticed water at her feet. Strange. The boat shouldn't be taking on water. She looked down and saw it seeping in through holes where plugs should have been. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She tried to row faster. The shore was still so far. The water was rising. The boat was sinking. She tried to bail with her hands, but for every handful she threw out, 10 more came in. The boat tilted, tipped, and slipped beneath the waves. Sophie was in the water. The cold hit her like a hammer. The waves battered her. The current pulled at her legs. She tried to swim, but the storm was too strong. She was too far from either shore. The cold was sapping her strength. Her muscles were failing. She thought of Michael, his smile, his voice, the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the uncaring waves. "I'm so sorry." Her arms stopped working. Her legs went numb. The water closed over her head. On the far shore, Michael watched the storm. "She won't come tonight," he told himself. "She's too smart. She'll stay safe." But as the hours passed, a terrible feeling grew in his chest, a cold dread that had nothing to do with the storm. Something was wrong. He could feel it. He grabbed his lantern, ran to the shore, held it high, scanning the churning water. "Sophie!" he screamed into the wind. "Sophie!" Nothing. Just waves and rain and howling darkness. Then he saw it. Something pale. A hand reaching up, then disappearing beneath a wave. No! He didn't think. He didn't hesitate. He dropped the lantern and ran into the water. The cold was brutal. The waves were relentless. But he kept swimming, toward where he had seen her. "Sophie, hold on, I'm coming." He found her, barely conscious, her eyes fluttering, her lips blue, her body giving up. "Michael," she whispered, "you came." "I've got you. Hold on to me." He grabbed her, tried to swim for shore, but the current was too strong. He was exhausted. She was dying, and the shore was impossibly far. "I can't make it," he gasped. "The current." Sophie looked at him, her beautiful eyes dimming now, but still full of love. "Then don't try," she whispered. "Stay with me. Just stay with me. I'm not letting you go. I know. I never doubted you. Not once." She touched his face, her fingers already cold, already losing feeling. "I loved you," she said. "From the first moment I saw you in my workshop, I knew. I love you too. I'll always love you. I know. I've always known." The waves rose around them. The cold seeped into their bones, but they held each other. "Don't let go," Sophie whispered. "Never," Michael promised. "Never." The storm raged. The cold consumed them. But in each other's arms, they found peace. Their foreheads touched, their eyes closed, and together, holding each other as they had always dreamed, they slipped beneath the waves.
By morning, the storm had passed. The water lay calm and still. The sky cleared to pale gray. They found them on the beach, together, still holding each other. Even in death, they had not let go. The whole village came to see. They stood in silence. Fishermen and shopkeepers, wives and children. Robert Cole, who finally understood why his wife had never loved him. Thomas Brennan, who fell to his knees and wept for the daughter he had driven away. And Martha, who saw what her cruelty had caused, and fled Haven Cove that very day, never to return. They buried them on the cliff, side by side, overlooking the water that had brought them together and torn them apart. The gravestone read,
Years passed. The story of Sophie and Michael became legend. Parents told their children, who told their children, who told theirs. Even now, 70 years later, people come to Haven Cove to see the graves, to hear the story, to look out at the inlet and imagine a woman swimming through darkness toward a light. And some nights, stormy nights, when the moon is hidden and the wind howls, people say they see a light on the far shore, a lantern burning in the darkness. And if you look very carefully at the water, you might see a woman swimming toward it. They say Sophie still crosses the water every night, forever, and Michael still waits for her, forever. Some loves are so powerful they transcend death. Some promises echo through eternity. Sophie Brennan loved a man named Michael Walsh, and for that love she crossed the water, night after night, through cold and darkness, through danger and fear. Because love like theirs doesn't know boundaries, doesn't accept impossibilities, doesn't surrender to the world's cruelties. He gave up his fortune for her. She risked her life for him. And when the water finally claimed her, he followed without hesitation, because a life without her was not a life worth living. They say true love conquers all, but sometimes true love loses. And yet, even in losing, it becomes eternal. Sophie and Michael lost their lives, but their love lives forever. In the waters of that inlet, in the hearts of those who hear their story, in the eternal truth that some things are worth dying for. If you've ever loved someone that deeply, if you've ever wanted to cross impossible waters for someone, then you understand. You understand why she swam. You understand why he waited. You understand why even now they're still together, on that far shore, in that eternal night, forever.